Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that a dog successfully registered to vote in the state of California, in Gavin Newsom's utopia? Well, that's true. That's what Elon Musk said after watching Nick Shirley's latest exposure of fraud in California. Yep, and I'm not shocked because I've been talking about election integrity since November 3rd, 2020, when we were bestowed with the safest and most secure election in American history, according to the people who committed the shenanigans, right? The people who rigged it came out and said it was safer and secure, more secure than anyone can possibly imagine. So Nick Shirley is in California right now, and he just uploaded a pretty long video. It's about 20 minutes long of him going to various places that are registered to vote. Dogs are registered to vote. Buildings are registered to vote. Parking lots are registered to anything. Any Democrats will register anything to vote. And it's good to see someone with Nick Shirley's platform size talking about it. I think it's a massive topic. It's more important than the Somali fraud. Yeah, the Somalis steal billions. But how do the politicians who allow the Somalis, enable them to steal the billions, get into office? That's the most important part. That's the fraud that I thought everyone else should have been talking about. Yes, it matters that Ilhan Omar and the pirates are taking money and sending it to Somalia to build their houses and mansions. Sure, that matters. But Ilhan Omar would not be in office if she wasn't caught or doing what she did, which was buy votes with $100, $50. I'm not kidding. James O'Keefe caught this way back then. Ilhan Omar's campaign was paying people for votes. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to sit here, and I'm going to let you guys absorb this information from Nick Shirley. I will interject and, add some pieces of information that people might not know. But I want everyone watching this to be informed about this. The DOJ should be very much informed. They are pushing to get access to these voter rolls before the midterms. Someone said I'm back. Yeah, we haven't done a live stream in like 2 weeks, so this is wow, that's crazy. It's just been videos. All right, let's go into this.
We're just looking for these individuals as they're registered to vote here. John Thomas and Philip Thomas. Is Gloria here by chance? Because she's 100 years old and she voted last election from here.
Can you see my, I said I want.
I just want to make sure you're not 126 years old.
No, I'm not.
And do you think it's possible like illegal migrants could be voting?
Not really.
Do you know where the ballots might have gone? Like for 108 people, that were registered here?
When it comes to fraud, most people think about money. However, there's another potential massive fraud story taking place in America, one tied to the most consequential system in our country, which is our voting system. This has to do with everything about who runs the country and how elections are actually controlled. And if we don't have voter integrity, what even are we? And there's one state that is the breeding ground for potential voting fraud, and that is California, where it can take up to 1 month to count all of the votes, no voter ID, and millions of ballots are cast by mail. And with voter rolls that are extremely vulnerable to errors, such as over 200 people who are over the age of 125 years old registered to vote in certain areas. And now to see how easy it is to vote, I headed to the location to register to vote inside the state of California. Now this is the register of voters right here. And I want to ask him, why don't you need voter ID to vote here inside of California? I was curious, how come in California you don't need voter ID to vote?
Because when you sign your affidavit, you're swearing that you're telling us the truth, and we compare the signature that you put on your application to the
Battery
signature
65%.
Do you think it leaves any room for error with voter ID, or? Yeah, I'm just curious because I want to make sure that our elections are as fair and.
Well, what's interesting is in Maricopa County, they didn't verify the signatures. So they say, okay, you don't need an ID, you just need a sign that what you're saying, who you are, is legal. You're a legal qualified voter. But then they don't even check the signature. So it's just ridiculous.
Honest as possible, and I feel like voter ID is just something super simple to have. And do you think it's possible like illegal migrants could be voting?
Not really. How? I mean, what was showing the ID?
Yeah, if they don't have their ID and they could just sign on behalf of Richard Sherman, then they could technically vote, right?
They would be lying.
Yeah.
And if no one's checking if they're lying, then what do you have?
But what if they just don't care? What if like Richard Sherman and Billy Bob Joe just don't care? But so you don't think illegals would ever vote, would you?
I don't think so.
No.
Same.
So instead of showing your ID, you sign your signature and then it is scanned to verify it is you. So technically speaking, anyone could show up saying they are someone, and if the signature is similar, that vote will then count. And with millions of people voting, it leaves room for fraud to occur. Just take these two examples.
A Southern California woman is facing 5 felonies after registering her dog to vote in 2 elections. The dog's vote was even counted in one of those elections. Those behind the stunt say she did it to show the flaws of the current system.
Hundreds of people who cast.
So, just so you understand, that lady published that I did that. And they prosecuted her. She was a whistleblower. She was a whistleblower acting in good faith to prove a problem with our system. Not California. Colorado has the same system too, to be fair. And they prosecuted the whistleblower because she registered her dog to prove, hey, look, this is actually like how the system actually works. And the only way they know she committed a crime is because she told on herself.
Votes according to state records, but we found they've been dead for years, including a woman who died in 1988, and records show she somehow voted in 2014, 26 years after she passed away. Then there's Julita Abutin. Records show she voted in Norwalk in 2014, 2012, 2010, and 2008. The only problem is she's buried here at Forest Lawn. Abutin died in 2006. Is it possible your mother voted in 2014?
There's no way.
Abutin's daughter Maravik says it's certainly impossible that her mother voted, but the LA County Registrar confirms they have signed vote-by-mail envelopes with her mother's name for the 2014 and 2012 election, even though she died 10 years ago.
So it's not some crazy conspiracy theory to think that people are illegally voting inside the state of California. And with the state receiving millions of illegal migrants, the opportunities for fraud now are even higher as millions of undocumented people are living inside of the state. Now let's go meet up with a man by the name of Urson, who has dedicated years of his life digging through voter rolls, finding fraud and inconsistencies throughout the state. So how bad is the voter fraud here in California?
Well, we actually don't know because law enforcement isn't really investigating it, and we don't have people qualified to actually figure that out.
And what kind of fraud is taking place?
Well, we have voter rolls of about 22 to 23 million people in California. And we have, just in Orange County per se, there's 60 to 70,000 changes a month that happens. So the amount of time and effort to go and follow up with every one of those, we just don't have the resources to do that.
And so what information have you been collecting about the voting fraud here in California?
We have people that are still in our rolls from 2008 that are still getting ballots mailed to them that haven't voted in 18, 16 years.
And so they haven't voted.
And this is true. My landlord from Colorado moved to California, and I assume they get ballots in their new residence in California. But I got ballots for them. Like they sat extra ballots with their name on them, even though they had moved years ago, years before I even got here. So that tells you this is a bad problem. I do want to move to this point where they start moving around I think it's Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken, around the area to see, some of the locations that, some of these ballots are coming from. Now, if you look right down there, they're going to an assisted living and memory care facility, which voted. And they have 45 registered voters.
Registered, and 41 of them actually turned out to vote in the last election. So that's just, again, not typical for 55 to 70% turnout. So it's a mental crisis senior rehabilitation center. So we're just going to go there and see, is there 45 people there? Is there beds? And check it out. Can we speak to the supervisor?
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, it looks like there was maybe 41 of 45 people that are registered here. Does that seem low or high to you? Like, as far as how many patients or residents do you have?
That's probably not accurate anymore.
So that lady right there said that that's probably not accurate.
Right.
So this could be a huge location where hundreds of votes could be casted from this one location. She said that numbers sound like they're inaccurate, 41 out of 45.
Correct. So is there a lot more people that could be registered to vote and could be having their voices expressed?
Well, let's move on to the next location.
You got it.
Now we're here in the University of San Diego because they got lots of voters here, but what's the deal with this location?
It's some sort of institute for peace and justice, so it doesn't seem like you'd have a lot of voters like registered at some sort of an administrative office, but it very well could be. I mean, there's students that are all over the place here, so maybe it's some sort of a central mailing house or something like that.
You have a conference room, you have Garden of the Sky, the Kroc School, classrooms, conference rooms, anything but dorms. And this is the location where 58 people are registered to vote here inside of the state of California.
Is this like a central mailing location, like this building for students and stuff?
No, this one is not. So we do have a mail center.
Because right here on the John B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice, it says we had 58 registered to vote, and 50 people voted from this location.
So is 5998 Alcala Park? You're saying
is the entire university.
Is the entire university. So where do the ballots go?
I have no clue.
Okay.
I've never seen them.
So far, we're 0 for 2 as far as getting any clarity about where these votes are being cast from here.
Yeah, or any sort of real clarity.
And at these locations, when there's only around 40 to 50 people registered to vote, in locations where there's hundreds and thousands of people, it leaves lots of room for speculations, especially when nobody actually knows what the real count is and where the votes are being casted from. And just a reminder, all this information from Urson is the most up-to-date information from the Secretary of State of California as far as the voter rolls go. The fraud continues. Now we're outside of a extra space, a storage unit location. Here, 5 people are registered to vote.
Correct.
Did they cast their votes?
3 of them did in the 24 election, then we had 1 that cast a ballot in the 2020 election and 1 that's never voted. The point is that unless this is a primary residence, right, or where you can sleep, right, which no one's supposed to by law allowed to sleep in their public storage unit, then this is not a legal registration. And these are the things that the county continues to let slip through the cracks.
Let's see if they're here. We have the names of all 5 people. Let's see if they're here. How's it going, sir?
How are you doing today?
Good. We're just looking for a few people here. We have Lily Morey, Philip Thomas, Sydney Thomas, Robert Thomas. We're just looking for these individuals as they're registered to vote here.
Did you have people that live here at Extra Space?
Are you Robert Thomas?
Oh, okay. Okay, so who gave you this list real quick?
Oh, from the Secretary of State.
Yeah, it's publicly available information.
What about Robert, Sydney, Philip, and Lily Thomas? What about them? Do they also get their ballots here?
Who?
Robert Thomas, Sydney Thomas.
That man has no idea what's going on. Because this is quite frankly how it works. Democrats inflate the voter rolls. This is what I've been talking about when I say bloated voter rolls. They inflate the voter rolls with real people, people that might have moved out of state. You hear about dead people a lot because that's the most outrageous one to hear. And so that sticks out. But the real problem isn't really with dead people. That's like a smaller portion of the issue with the voter rolls. The bigger issue and the bigger categories of inflation come from people who moved out of the state. So you moved. You packed your bags, you're gone. You're not supposed to be registered there. You're out of that state. I think that's the biggest category. Well, I don't think, I know. So if you have, 1,000 dead people in a precinct, you probably have at least 3,000 people who are on those rolls that moved. So it's a big problem. And I love that Nick Shirley is just asking these people, hey, do you know this person? Do you know that person? And just like, I've never heard that name before. Because a lot of the times what they do is these Democrat NGOs on the ground, when they are, building their turnout apparatus, they'll go to homeless people and say, hey, man, you going to vote for Gavin Newsom? And then that homeless person is going to be like, no, he spent like $20 billion on homelessness and I'm still homeless. Be like, hey, we'll slide you some money, something like that. And then they'll say, but I don't have an address. How can I register? And then they'll say, okay, but we have a solution. We're going to register you out of this parking lot. And that person goes, okay, man, I'll take the free food. Because to them, their vote means nothing. That's the most valuable thing they have if you're homeless. Hey, give me $50. I'll buy that fentanyl. Like, that's really what these people think about. So you have to put yourself in the mind of a Democrat operative who is getting paid a lot of money. They're not volunteers. They're paid to work by NGOs funded by George Soros and others. Just think about what they're willing to do to get power, to get their candidate to win, and to make as much money as possible.
John Thomas and Philip Thomas. Do you know where any of those individuals are? Any of the Thomases?
No, they're not here right now.
There's no one living in storage facilities, right? That's
No,
really
right?
the question, right? Just wondering if people are actually living in storage facilities or not.
So 5 people are registered to vote here. They confirmed that nobody lives here. A little fishy. California's got some weird things going on. So 5 people, and they didn't know where any of the Thomases were, but this is their primary location.
Well, if those 2 people actually live here and this is where they stay, their primary residence, right? They get their driver's license here, their tax stuff comes here. It's completely legal. But the other people that are here that they didn't know or do know or so forth, right? Are they someone that was just getting something in a storage facility? So.
But this is a storage facility. There's no apartments here.
No.
Nobody's living here.
Not inside the storage facilities. But if the couple that we spoke to is actually, this is their primary residence, that would be legal under state law.
But for these 5 people that are registered in that cast.
That's not their primary residence. They work there. I get the point, though. And here's yet another one. People registered at a UPS location.
Address to receive your mail, but for it to be on the voter registration form and for the voter rolls, it must be your domicile address, your primary address. Now we're going to start going to some of these locations where people have put their primary addresses as P.O. boxes. In locations like the one we're about to go to, over 30 people are registered to vote at this one UPS store. With this fraud, a lot of these people registered to vote had their primary residency at a UPS store or United States Postal Service location. Right here we have over 30 people who are registered to vote, and all these people right here, there's over 30 of them, are registered to vote, and this is their location, and a large majority of them actually voted in the 2024 election against Trump and Joe Biden. And right here we have Gloria. Gloria voted in the last election. She's 100 years old.
Yeah, born in 1925. Still kicking.
What do you think about over 30 people are registered to vote in this UPS store right here? Is that a little strange to you?
Is it through P.O. boxes?
Yeah.
I don't know. What are you trying to do, or what are you trying to prove?
Yes.
That's how you know she's a liberal. What do you mean? What are you trying to prove? Okay, it's just wrong, lady. Doesn't matter what their intention is. When they say it to you, you just go, that's wrong.
So you have to re-register where you live, right? Where your primary residence is. And so if you've got a primary residence that's a UPS store, there's a real tiny houses, inside the UPS store for people to live in.
Probably. What's your guys' affiliation?
My name's Nick
citizens.
Shirley.
Yeah.
Could you live inside a P.O. box?
No.
So do you think it's a little strange that here in California you have lots of people who are registered to vote from these P.O. boxes, meanwhile you don't even have to show your ID when you go and vote?
Nah, I don't want to be part of the whole MAGA storyline. Thank you.
This isn't a MAGA storyline, man. This is just the straight up facts. Now we're going in. How are you guys doing? Yeah.
You're not allowed to be here. Can you step outside?
Could we talk to somebody?
No. Can you step
This is super important.
Yeah, can you step outside?
Wonder if she tipped them off, but yeah, they go to a few more locations, ask some locals, what they think and everything. Kind of curious with this man here. I'm going to end this very shortly. I don't want to drag this on too long, but let's see what this guy has to say.
California should require voter ID.
Do I think that voters should require voter ID?
Yes.
No.
Why not?
Why?
How come you need an ID when you go to the airport?
I don't know why you got to do that either.
So do you think it's possible to have fair elections here in the United States if people don't prove who they actually are by giving their ID when they go and vote?
I can't even answer that. Because I'm like this, if you hear...
Chuck Schumer might be right, man. Black people might not be able to get... Oh, man. Well, look, amazing work by Nick Shirley. I mean, this guy's back must hurt from carrying journalism in the last few months. I have to say this because it's true. It's tough to do election integrity. People ask, why aren't congressional Republicans doing more? The SAVE Act is important, and they did get the 50 votes or co-sponsors needed in the Senate to make it real, right, to bring it forward. So we have Susan Collins signed on to that. She's the 50th, meaning if it was voted on and it was 50-50, J.D. Vance would break the tie, and it would be 51 to 50. So the SAVE Act is in a really good spot. The SAVE Act would require proof of citizenship for vote registrants and people who go to renew their registration, meaning everyone has to prove they are a U.S. citizen with different documents, whether it's a passport, birth certificate, etc. On the other hand, you have voter ID on the SAVE Act, which is a national requirement for it. The federal government can do that, but the problem in the country is you can't get rid of mail-in ballots because according to Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 of the Constitution, all the times, places, and manner of holding federal elections shall be prescribed by the legislature in the state thereof. What does that mean? Well, California can choose the time. We have a time for federal elections, right? So Tuesday, November. So whether that's November 3rd, November 5th, 8th, whatever the first Tuesday in November is for federal, presidential, or congressional elections, midterms and whatnot. And then that's the federal time. Manner, that's where the states can decide if they want to do mail-in ballots or just in-person on election day voting, or they want to count with machines or not use machines. This is where that ambiguity comes in. So that's the problem we have, which is we have decentralized elections. I wouldn't say it's a problem, but I'd say if you are trying to reform and have a consistent theme across the country and a consistent election system, you're going to struggle. But the federal government does have power to define who a qualified elector is as it relates to federal elections. Most state constitutions define what a qualified elector is. So the federal government does have power to recognize a universal voter ID or proof of citizenship, identify that that is a qualified elector. That's the power Congress has. But as it relates to how states manage voter rolls, how they do and conduct voting, that's where it gets hard and difficult. President Trump posted on Truth Social that regardless of if the Republicans get the SAVE Act through Congress or not, he's going to be able to impose voter ID. What that means, I don't really know. I think the DOJ is just going to make sure that they have enough monitors across the country in the shenanigan hot zones and hope for the best and prosecute criminality if it happens. And that's good. Ultimately, that's good. But ladies and gentlemen, that's Nick Shirley for you. Democrats will be very pissed that he's in their state, exposing an even worse type of fraud. Let's see what happens, how this develops. Go to Nick Shirley's channel. That's where you'll find the full uninterrupted video, because I did pause and I interrupted it quite often. You read some comments and then I got to get out of here, man. It's getting late. I know some of you guys have bedtimes, man. And I'm getting tired because my screen has eliminated blue light as of 3 hours ago. So my brain is feeling sleepy. Colorado Patriot earlier said, how is it you have 600 watching and only 3 likes? I don't know. Philip says, keep those Dumbocrats on the run. I can barely see with this stupid filter on my screen, man. Why did I do this to myself? Nick is awesome. Yeah, he's a great patriot. Absolutely. All right, Lord, we pray for election justice. Give us the truth and nothing but the truth. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all very much for watching. God bless and good night. Man, screen sucks. Why do I have this stupid filter? It doesn't even help with the blue light. You can barely see anything.